I want you to listen to this TikTok from my brother Tyson, Neil deGrasse Tyson, because I want you to learn about how Baghdad, which used to be the center of intellect, how it failed. And that is what MAGA is doing to America right now, how it failed. I want you to listen to this.
1,000 years ago, the intellectual center of the world was Baghdad. Baghdad. Europe was busy disemboweling heretics at the time. Baghdad was open to all thought at the time, between AD 800 and 1100, around there. If you look at the advances that unfolded in that period, in that location, it includes the invention of algebra. Algebra is an Arabic word. Algorithm is an Arabic word. 2/3 of the stars in the night sky that have names have Arabic names. How does that happen? Where did the naming rights come from? It came from the fact that at that time, huge advances in the Middle East, in Baghdad in particular, was unfolded in engineering, mathematics, especially mathematics, astronomy, navigation, physiology. And you say, well, why is that so? If you look at what was going on, they were open to all lines of thought. Jews, Muslims, Christians. There were doubters back then. Today we would call them atheists. They would all come around a table and share ideas. If you have some philosophy that's got holes in it, someone's going to find it. And you're going to challenge you on those ideas. And what happens is the conversation ratchets up. You discard what doesn't work and you keep what does. And when you do that, you make discoveries, and you make discoveries rapidly. And at the time, that period drew to a close. If you read history books, they'll typically describe sort of the sacking of Baghdad. It was a bad time for the city. And they say, oh, it all came to an end. However, the Islamic culture rose at other times later. And in those other times, science and engineering discoveries were not a part of it. So he asked, why not? You got the cultural heritage, why doesn't it show up again? And then you got to dig a little deeper from the sacking of Baghdad, and you find out there was a Muslim cleric, Al-Ghazali was his name, who was to Islam what St. Augustine was to Christianity. St. Augustine kind of laid out the rules for how to be a good Christian at the time. A lot of people were practicing it in their own way. He codified it. He was a religious scholar, figured it out according to his own read, told everybody how to behave. There's the book. You follow this, you're a good Christian. Al-Ghazali said, you follow this, you're a good Muslim. In that text included the assertion, which gained influence socially, but then politically, so then it had power of influence. In there was the assertion that mathematics and the manipulation of numbers was the work of the devil. The entire enterprise collapsed and never recovered. It has not recovered since. If you look at the number of Muslims who have won the Nobel Prize in the sciences, it's 1. Number of Jews who have won the Nobel Prize, 1/4 of all Nobel Prizes in science have been won by Jews. How many Muslims in the world? 1.3 billion. How many Jews in the world? 15 million tops. So you look at what effect the culture of discovery and learning can have on what you discover about the natural world. It's extraordinary. So just because you're making discoveries doesn't mean it's forever. And I look at the 20th century in America as a period of great discovery. And then I see forces now operating against it. And then I look at the history of the consequences of this, and I see America just simply fading into insignificance. No, it's not off of a cliff. It's just a slope. And every next day, you're a little bit further down on the slope. You barely notice it, right? Until one day you can't see over the hill that you just came from. And then you try to make do with what you have down here. And then you find out that it's the rest of the world making the inventions and not you. You're trailing, no longer leading. You're not even abreast with what's going on. You're running behind trying to catch up. Have a nice day. Yes.
And that is profound, because we are exactly where he's speaking about when the decline started with the sacking of Baghdad. We have the sacking of the American intellect. And we started with the election of a buffoon. A buffoon, well, actually, it didn't start with the election of the buffoon. He is the instantiation of all that was happening to put us where we're at today. Because we had the moral majority and all these guys holding back books and burning books and taking books away and teaching alternate history and talking about the earth being 6,000 years old and wanting to put Bibles as a text in schools and modifying the Constitution, all in inept, designed stupidity, trying to remove science and intellect from us all. And what it means is that as we do that, and because we don't go anywhere, as I'm going to read your stuff, Michael. Michael talk about 2/3 living paycheck to paycheck. Well, if 2/3 of the people live paycheck to paycheck, they can't go anywhere. They can't go and see the world. They can't see what is happening outside of the world. And what you get is you get that Donald Trump comes out and says, green energy is a farce. It's a farce. And the rest of the world say, America will no longer be a competitor to us. We no longer have to worry about that, America's prowess, because they chose to be idiots. So we will go with energy and run. We will go with green energy and green cars and electric cars and all the new technologies. So China picked up the mantra. And now China is building more electric cars than anybody else. They're even building a float of ships that docks in the country, and the cars just come rolling off. While we have old-fashioned old crap called Tesla and Ford and all these others keeping the Chinese cars out because they don't want to have to compete. The degradation of America. When I came to the United States, I remember this, and I'm coming to all the other stuff, but I remember this distinctly. I put this in my book. I remember when my grandfather was the first one of us to come over to this country. This book, As I See It, Class Warfare. I want to tell you what, for all of you who thinks those of us that come over to the States somehow are anti-American and all that crap, we are more Americans many a times than Americans, because we know what the myth was about America, and we wanted to live the American myth. We wanted what America said it was. That's what we wanted. I really want to find a passage in this book, because I never forgot. My grandfather laughed at me so hard. Okay, I think this is it here. Here's what I put in my book. As I See It, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. This is how we felt about America from looking from the outside in. I wrote, America was respected for its power. Moreover, there was great admiration of many of its strong leaders like President Abraham Lincoln, President Theodore Roosevelt, President Franklin Roosevelt, President John Kennedy, Reverend Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, George Washington Carver, and a few other true American heroes. My maternal grandfather immigrated to the United States in the 1950s. He had not returned to Panama until sometime in the early 1970s, when I was really, really young. To this day, I remember picking up his shoes, looking at the soles and telling him, imagine these shoes walked in the United States. Such were the feelings one had for this land. As I See It, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. Let me tell you something, guys. I came here in the early 80s, went to school here in the early 80s. And from Reagan came in to power, I watched the decline of America relative to the rest of the world, not the growth of America. And we have been trying. I was political from the time I got here, being at the University of Texas, marching for the divestiture of South Africa, marching for improving or the way we treat people, marching for all these other things. But just watching the exponential decline, because when I came here, the decline was slight. I remember Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the White House. Jimmy Carter started the SynFuel program. Things that, in as much as SynFuel was an issue, because we don't know if it was green energy or not, because even though it's recyclable, but he started programs to move us off of the burning oil and move us to the future green energy back in the 70s. And Reagan came into power. Reagan was no different than Trump. Reagan just had more class than Trump. That's all. He had more class than Trump. But he removed the solar panels. He destroyed SynFuels. He went ahead and went straight into supply side economics, where it wasn't about who made things, who created things, the intellect of people. It was about how to make a buck for those who do the least. And our economy has been that since then. Other countries reward teachers. When I saw a teacher in a commissary, in a store, I stood at attention. That was a teacher, whether it be English, whether it be anything else, respect. In America, teachers, The most important profession bar none. No respect. They don't even want to pay them. Your kids spend over 8 hours a day with these teachers. They spend more time with the teachers than they spend with you. You don't want your taxes to pay them. How insane. How insane. We continue to progressively make ourselves dumber. And just like Neil deGrasse Tyson says, it's that slope down, not to mediocrity, but to irrelevance. China is doing a hell of a job making America irrelevant. Like I said a couple of shows back, we're just going to be a big country with a big military that people use to blow up stuff as everybody else innovates. All of our country's problems, from polarization to ignorance on domestic and international issues to a complete misunderstanding of our economic and healthcare systems, are a direct result of a derelict mainstream media that too often bend over backwards to support corporate or bought politicians' wants as opposed to the people's needs for real information to make their lives better. Independent media is the only solution to inform truthfully and factually. Why? Because our loyalties are to you, the ones who fund us with small dollar contributions and subscriptions. Please consider supporting our independent media platforms by subscribing to our Egberto Off the Record newsletter at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Again, that is politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. It's an investment that pays incalculable dividends.